Hello, friends by choice.
You are listening to another episode of the Sisters by Chance podcast.
Episode 4.
Wow, we've come so far.
I know, we really have come a long way from episode 1, so thank you for sticking by and joining us for episode 4. So how's your week been?
I got a haircut.
Curtain bangs.
Curtain bangs.
Not the bang.
The bang?
I really love them, and I kind of feel inspired to copy, but I don't want to be that girl.
We're always copying each other, though.
Yeah, it's like a back and forth thing. Mm-hmm. I always wanted bangs, so I feel like my forehead is just so prominent.
Yeah, Mom got bangs, and it looked really good. I think
you
would rock it. I wouldn't be mad if you copied me.
The title of today's episode is You So Fine, What's Your Sign?
Hot damn. What's your Enneagram?
In today's episode, we will be diving deep into the 9 Enneagram types and the 12 Zodiac signs.
We talk about how to better understand them and apply them to your life. Once you know more about yourself, it's easier to work on self-improvement.
For sure. I definitely think that these are great tools, not only for entertainment purposes, but for like deep self-reflection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That leads us into the quote of the day.
What is the quote of the day?
The quote of the day is, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And that was said by my good old pal, Aristotle.
Your good old pal.
Yes.
You guys go way back.
We go way back. He would see my dreams sometimes.
But astral projecting to visit.
But he is like... He's a philosopher and an astrologer who has invented and like established a lot of really amazing things. So he's right. The beginning to knowing yourself is like unlocking the wisdom to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So shout out to him.
Shout out Aristotle. Yeah, I mean, knowing yourself is kind of the source when it comes to like your perception of the world. That's all you know. That's all we're only capable of knowing is us and the way we see the world. And so to really know yourself like that, it just kind of makes the world a better place for everyone, I feel like.
Yeah. So the way we're going to do this episode is I'm going to talk about zodiac signs first because that is kind of my forte. That is something I'm passionate about.
And then I'm going to be talking about Enneagrams because while I do know zodiac signs, I feel like I know more about zodiacs than Addi knows about Enneagrams.
Okay, so let's start off with the definition of astrology, and this definition comes from stardate.org, and they say astrology is the art of studying the relative positions of the sun, moon, planets, and constellations in the zodiac to explain and predict events on Earth. The constellations in the zodiac are often used by astrologers to help explain and predict events on Earth. And I just wanted to put a little disclaimer out there for today's episode that a lot of people think zodiac signs can be kind of against their religion, and this is just for fun and entertainment purposes. You don't have to live by this and completely apply it to your life and, you know, throw out whatever Bible or whatever you're listening or reading to better understand yourself. This is kind of just another tool, and if you don't believe in it, you don't have to, but it is kind of fun to figure out more about yourself that you didn't know already.
Yeah, whether you're using this as a way to predict. I mean, there's people who like religiously follow astrology and like use it in their day-to-day lives to make predictions and things like that. You know, like she said, by definition, it's used to kind of use the planets to
predict,
kind of set a forecast for your life. But it doesn't have to be that deep if you don't want it to be that deep. It's also just really fun to learn about your sign because everyone has one based on your birthday, and, you know, it's interesting to see how it applies and how it doesn't.
Yeah. There are 12 zodiac constellations. The first are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, and those are the fire signs of the zodiac. They are known to be very passionate, sometimes can be known to be aggressive, loud, very outgoing, easy to make friends, but also just very loyal and very, like, driven people because they have like a fire in their soul. They're the fire signs. They're fiery. They're like not afraid of conflict, not afraid to stand up and say something. So I really, really love fire signs. They're some of my favorite people. Next, we have air signs. That is Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. I am a Gemini sun, in case you're wondering. I know I've already mentioned that on this podcast many times, but
Every 2 seconds. Do you guys know I'm a Gemini?
oh yeah, that's just because I'm a Gemini. Sorry.
How Gemini am I?
But yes, those are the air signs, and we are known to be very go with the flow, as you know, air. Very outgoing, very thinkers. We are kind of the thinkers of the zodiac. We like to learn everything and know everything. We're great at communication, and we're also just kind of known to be a little bit flaky, but very like persistent, loyal, to other people that we love, but we can come off as flaky because we're kind of just like going with the flow, going with wherever the wind takes us. But yeah, there's pros and cons to that. Obviously, it's a very free-spirited lifestyle that us air signs live.
Air signs just kind of go with the wind wherever it takes them.
Yes, for sure. And then we have the water signs. That is Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio. They're stereotypically known to be the sensitive crybabies of the zodiac, the water signs, the melancholy, but they are very, very intuitive and smart, and they're some of the most spiritual signs, so they're the most like connected to like the earth and spirit and all of that, and they're a lot of spiritual leaders are water signs.
A lot of artists too, like anyone doing something creative, they're most likely
they're able to really like show feelings through art, like through writing or videography or pictures or actual art. It's very easy for them to display emotion through their art, where it's like, some other signs like air signs are super creative, but it's more in like a fundamental fun way and not as a like expressing deep emotion way.
I also feel like water signs are often pegged to be like sad, but I feel like they're just very in tune with their emotions, and it doesn't just apply to sadness, it applies to all their emotions. So when they just feel really, really deeply. And so when they're sad,
it's like a heavy sadness.
Exactly. So
they're sensitive.
Yeah.
And that's not to be something to be thought of as negative. But yeah, and that's, everything's on a scale. So you have like a really healthy Pisces who's very like in tune with their emotions, knows how to handle, and then you have maybe a more immature Pisces who hasn't really worked through all of those things. So you can have different spectrums, but that's kind of their basic traits that they're known for. And then last but not least is your earth signs. That is Virgo, Taurus, and Capricorn. They're known to be very grounded, organized, neat, very successful, business-minded people. And they're kind of just like, they're earth signs. When you think of earth, like they're very, like I said, grounded, very stable for the most part, and just kind of about getting their things done, and they're usually really smart, really successful. A lot of CEOs are either Capricorns or Tauruses because they're kind of just very organized and very successful. A lot of people think that you are just one sign, and that is your sun sign, which is like, I'm a Gemini, she's a Pisces. That's your main sign that you identify with. But there's actually an entire birth chart. It looks like a giant circle, and it is literally a snapshot of the sky and all the planets, where they were at the exact time and place and day you were born. So you have more than just one sign. You have an entire chart of signs that mean all different things that make up who you are in all aspects. But if you are unsure of your birth chart and you want to find out what that is, it's super easy. You just go to astrologycafe.com. We will put it in the episode links, and you just need to know the place you were born, the time you were born, and of course your birthday, which you already know. Super easy. You just enter all that information. It'll give you the like snapshot of the sky, and then it'll kind of break it down for you in a really easy way to understand. But today we are going to be talking about your big 3 signs. That is your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. Those are the 3 personality blueprints of the signs. It's basically kind of your main chart.
Yeah.
It's what most people are starting to learn. So when you ask someone what their big 3 is, they might not know much about astrology or their whole chart, but they'll at least know their big 3.
Yeah. I feel like astrology has kind of been more trendy lately. A lot of people are kind of looking into it more, and it's really interesting. I didn't know any of this for the longest time. I was like, oh, I'm a Pisces. And I plugged it in, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
It makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it just really gave me a better picture of how it applies to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, I definitely identify with Pisces. Like, yes, I'm sad. Yeah. Very accurate. But I also am, like, kind of opposite. I almost feel like a Gemini sometimes, because Geminis have, like, kind of two personalities. That's what they're known for. But my Aquarius moon is so opposite of my Pisces. So it was really interesting to be like, okay, wait, that's where my crazy side comes from.
Yeah. If you don't identify with your sign very much and you're like, okay, I don't really believe in astrology. Like, this is super vague. I don't really, like, believe in all of this. It doesn't really apply to me. Look up your birth chart, because it'll literally, like, word for word tell you exactly who you are, and it's pretty scary accurate. So definitely recommend, if you're, like, on the fence about whether or not you believe in it, look up your birth chart. All right, so let's go into your sun, moon, and rising and what that even means. Like we said, your sun sign is your main sign. That is your ego. That is your soul. That is who you are, like, deep down, and that is, like, your probably what you identify the most as. And what when someone asks you, what's your zodiac sign, you're going to say whatever your sun sign is.
That's your main sign. That's you.
This is determined, like I said, by where the sun was when you were born. So what constellation it was in, the time and place and day you were born. Your moon sign rules your emotions. It's who you are deep down at your core. It's kind of like who you may not show to other people unless you're deeply comfortable. It's how you process emotions and thoughts. And that is where the moon was located whenever you were born. So your moon sign can actually sometimes overpower your sun sign. Like Camryn was saying, if you have, like, a fiery moon sign and then a water sun sign, you may identify more as the fire sign because it's so strong, and your moon is, like, your emotions, and sometimes that can overpower something else. So sometimes if you don't really identify with your sun sign, definitely look into your moon sign, because you might identify with it a lot more.
Yeah, your moon sign is kind of like your second sign. I mean, when it comes to, like, obviously there's no particular order. Your chart is just kind of your chart. But when it comes to, like,
who you are,
who you are at your core, the moon sign will really give you a good picture of that.
Yeah. The rising sign is the planetary influence that was rising at the time that you were born. So you have to be pretty specific on the birth time if you want to get this right. This is the only one that really has to do with your birth sign completely. So if you're even an hour off or a couple minutes off, it can completely change your rising sign. But your rising sign is basically your face mask. It's who you present to other people that you don't know. So a lot of the times, like, when people meet you and you're like, guess my sign, they'll guess your rising sign because that's what you're coming off as, because you're not, open and deeply comfortable with this person yet.
Yeah.
So you're putting on this mask. For example, I am a Leo rising, which Leos, all Leo risings are hot. That's all I gotta say. But it is basically, Leos are super, like, star of the show, center of attention, like, actress, drama queen, Hollywood, blah, blah, blah. And I don't really feel like at my core that's who I am. But
you definitely come off like that.
But I come off like that a lot, especially in, like, group party situations. I'm, like, always the life of the party, always, like, doing, especially in high school, like, doing crazy things to, like, get attention. And then people would meet me and they're like, hang out with me outside of that setting and be like, oh, you're not actually, like, that annoying. Like, you don't crave attention that much. But it's, like, it's kind of crazy that you can come off a certain way, and then, so you don't judge a book by its cover, because people totally act different when you first meet them. But that can really help you understand why you may come off a different way than you think you actually are.
Yeah, like, as a Cancer rising, I have a personal beef with Cancers. We're not going to get into it, but I don't know. There's just, me and Cancers don't really mix, but I'm a Cancer rising, so when someone, like, doesn't like me right off the bat, which happens to me a lot, like, I have a bad track record of just, like, not making a great first impression, and I'm just going to blame it on my Cancer rising. because
she's just very quiet and reserved, and it comes off as rude.
Yeah.
People are like, why is she not talking to me? Why is she like being so rude? And really, she's just like freaking out that everyone's judging her on the inside.
Pretty much.
But it is something that a lot of people grow out of. Like, you usually grow out of your rising sign by the time you're like in late adulthood, because you don't really care too much about putting on a mask or presenting in some way, and you come off more as your sun sign as you get older.
Yeah.
The other signs in your chart can tell you a lot about your love life and your career choices and stuff like that, but your big three are your personality blueprint and basically make up who you are at your core.
So if you want to kind of delve deeper into this, if this interests you, what your big three are, I'd say definitely go further and explore your Neptune and your Venus and all of that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, the like how in-depth it is, especially when you go deeper. People think it's this like surface level thing, and they see those like Instagram memes of like Zodiac memes and horoscopes, and it's just really vague and like not serious.
Yeah, it's easy to be like, oh, that would totally apply to anyone.
Yeah, but when you dive deep into the actual science of astrology and like the depths of it and really learn about it, it is a very specific scientific study. And it's not something that's like fun and games. Where it is fun, it is really serious when you get into it, and when you learn more about it, it really kind of helps you better understand yourself.
Mm-hmm. While I love learning about zodiac signs, I kind of find the Enneagram test even more interesting because it's not this like predetermined thing from when you were born.
Right.
While you don't get to choose it, like obviously I want to be that type. It doesn't work like that. You know, it's less predetermined and more about psychology than anything. Right. About, who you are, how you became that way.
Your childhood, what led, like certain events led to a certain thing that kind of build you up to be your type.
Mm-hmm, yeah, so this has more of the ideology that you're kind of formed in your early years to have a certain personality versus just being born and I kind of believe a little bit of both, honestly.
Yeah, and you can use both. You can believe in as many of these different types of things as possible. And, the more open-minded you are, the more you can apply all of them to you and kind of get a deeper understanding in general.
I saw a TikTok the other day talking about how people who kind of have a lost sense of self-identity are really drawn to these types of personality tests and whatnot because they're like, who am I? Tell me who I am.
Yeah. I am that way, especially as a Gemini. I just have like so many different personalities that I put on in front of all these different people. And I'm like, okay, wait, who am I? Literally, who am I?
Who is the real me?
Yeah, and that's why the first time I took the Enneagram test, I actually mistyped myself because I have this like different perception of who I am versus who I really am.
Yeah. And I was like, Addi, I love you, but you're not a 2.
I was like, but I am literally the most selfless person ever.
No. There's a lot of people who just simply don't believe in astrology and totally respect that. The Enneagram is more of a tool that's just there. You don't have to believe it. It's there if you want it. And it's just really supposed to help you understand yourself and guide you to be a better human at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And I feel like with astrology, there's not always like a goal.
Yeah.
It's kind of different in that way. The whole point of the Enneagram test is to analyze your psychology and figure out what type you are and use that to address the negative things about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So all you have to do to find out your type is just go online and take a test. And like she said, she mistyped at first. So you really have to answer the questions as honestly as you can. And they're really deep questions. Like, it's analyzing parts of yourself that you never even really thought about before.
Yeah, I would say even just taking the test itself is a part of like reflection. Just taking the test itself.
Yeah, even before like viewing my answers after taking it, like I didn't even see what the results were yet, and I was still like, oh my gosh. I was like curled up in a ball and I'm like, wait, this is insane. Like these questions are so deep. I already feel like I got a lot of insight just from like thinking about these things and being like, how do I work? How does my brain work? You know?
And why?
And why? Why am I like this? Please tell me. So once you take the test and get your results, you're going to get a number between 1 and 9, and each of these numbers being a different personality type. So it's going to give you your top 3, actually, and you're going to kind of determine which one you resonate with the most, because while it is a great test, you kind of have to do some self-research and figure out which one is the most accurate for me and which one do I resonate with the most. Mm-hmm. Once you know your main type, you kind of delve into wings, and wings can be on either side of your number. For example, I'm a type 4, so I can only be a 4-wing 3 or a 4-wing 5. And it works like a big circle, kind of similar to Zodiac's. But on this circle, it's, like a clock, except there's only 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And 1 and 9 connect at the top. So if you're a 1, you can only be a 1-wing 2 or a 1-wing 9. The whole point of wings is to really dive deeper into your personality, and oftentimes it'll balance out some of the traits in your main type.
Yeah.
So as I go through all the numbers 1 through 9, you'll kind of see how they connect and kind of flow into each other. Like a 5 and a 6 will seem very similar, and a 6 and a 7 will seem very similar, but like a 1 and a 5 will be like completely opposite. Yeah. And you might relate to traits on either side of your wings. So as a 4, I heavily relate to both 3 and 5, but it's just a matter of which one I relate to more. And we all have a little bit of all 9 types in us.
Yeah.
It's just figuring out which one's the most you.
Which one is like you can resonate with the most, and you can resonate with like a little bit, a trait from each one, but there is one that will stand out to you and be like, wow.
Yeah. And it goes a lot deeper than just surface level stuff like, oh, like I'm late all the time. Such a Scorpio.
Yeah.
It's more about, like I said, your psychology and your reasoning behind doing something. So like a type 4 and a type 8 can do the same exact thing. They can perform the same action, and their intentions can be completely different. So that's the difference between that. That's why it's easy to mistype yourself, because it's like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. But it's like, okay, we really need to think about why you do that, though.
Right. And that's totally why I mistyped, because I thought like, oh, I do these things for this reason, but really it was a different reason. Once I kind of took the test another time and got some insight on it, I was able to understand like, okay, this is why it's this.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, your type is not assigned at birth, but it does run really, really deep into your childhood. Each type has what they call a childhood wound, and this is a mindset that you probably had as a child based on some kind of event, or maybe even just your sibling dynamic, your environment. There's a lot of things that can kind of affect your childhood wound, and most of the times it revolves around what that child feels like they need to do to feel loved, to be loved and accepted by their parents or whoever. So while you think, your childhood is far behind you and it doesn't really affect you, it actually has a huge impact on who you are today.
Yeah. You're actually from ages infancy to 7 years old. Your personality and your mind is literally putty. And you are completely shaped in those 7 years. Once you're like at 8, you have those like predetermined personality traits they're set in. There's not much you can do at that point. So you kind of like have this little period of time that created these things, and now you have the rest of your life to learn how to work with them and adapt.
Mm-hmm. And I think the Enneagram is a great tool to do that. With each type, you also get a really good look at what your personality looks like when you're thriving versus when you're doing horribly.
Yeah.
And there's 9 different levels to this. Don't be confused with the 9 types. Within each type, there's 9 levels. 9 is a really good even number to just kind of,
It's literally an odd number, but go off.
I knew it was an odd number, but I meant even in the way that's just like 9 everything.
Yeah.
9 types,
9
levels. 9. So a level 1, 2, and 3 are just extremely healthy people. They have it all figured out.
Mentally stable.
Yeah, must be nice. And just a good, high-functioning type 4. or whatever your type is. And then average levels are 4, 5, and 6. You know, just a normal person. You're not doing
have your
horribly.
struggles, but you're still pretty solid.
Yeah, just mentally strong enough to deal with day-to-day life. And then we have, it gets kind of dark, 7, 8, and 9. And like reading your level 9, just like the worst that you're capable of.
Yeah.
It like, you know, level 7 is like, oh, you know, you're often flaky to your friends or this, that, or the other. But like every single level 9 will tell you like narcissism, major depression, you might be bipolar, just like what your type is and at its worst. And
rock bottom, baby.
Yeah. It gets pretty crazy. You do not want to be a level 9. Let's really try to avoid that. I don't think I've ever been a level 9. It's really rare, honestly, for someone to get
I think I've definitely
that low.
been an 8.5.
You've been that low?
I feel like, well, when I read, like, my bad traits for that, like, when it was listing, I did feel like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I've actually been, maybe I was more in a middle ground, but I remember reading some of the negative traits and being like, I've definitely done that before or been that way before. And I'm like cringing looking back on it.
Yeah. I've probably been an 8.
8.
It's really hard reading, you know, those negative things, but that's really what it's all about, is seeing the negative and learning how to be a higher level.
You literally can't change if you don't know what's wrong with you.
Uh-huh.
Like if you don't know the exact things that you're doing to cause you and yourself and others harm, you'll never be able to change it. That's why this is important to learn about, because you'll be able to make those changes where you otherwise wouldn't be if you didn't know these things about yourself.
Without further ado, let's dive into the 9 types.
I'm about to dive in. I don't know if any of you guys ever watched Sarah Baska on YouTube growing up, but she literally used to do like the dive in song by Trey songs before every video, and it's deeply ingrained in my mind.
Thanks for that.
You're welcome. If you guys don't already watch Sarah Baska, please. She actually just started a podcast.
Oh, wow. We need to get her as a guest.
Yeah. Sarah podcast guest, Sarah Baska.
And Caitlin. We love Caitlin.
Yes. Tag them in the comments. But yeah, you should go check them out if you don't already know who they are. They're really funny.
Anyways.
Anywhoozles.
Type 1 is the perfectionist. They are principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionistic.
I know a lot of perfectionists in my life, and a lot of the times you can be a perfectionist to a fault, which I'm sure is what the negative traits are, because there's a difference between like striving for perfection and like
obsessing
over it. And obviously nobody's perfect, even no matter how hard you try. So it can be a really slippery slope because you're literally striving for something that is not obtainable.
Yeah. And kind of the reasoning behind this in their childhood wound sounds something like, I must strive to follow the rules, be responsible, and catch my mistakes before others do. If I'm good, they'll love me.
Right. And we knew in our childhood growing up a bunch of like, because we were kind of the kids that were like
bad influences
and like breaking the rules. Like we would steal cupcakes from the cupboard and like drink soda when we weren't supposed to and stuff like that. Like kind of just like little like sneaky. Yeah. And we would have friends who were complete goody two shoes and would like
follow every single rule even when no one was around. And
yeah, they were just like scared to not be following a rule. Even if it wasn't something like they would like go above and beyond to make sure that they didn't get in trouble. And that's because they felt like if they did something wrong, they would not be worthy of love.
Some examples of some type 1s you might know: Kate Middleton, Joan of Arc, and Michelle Obama.
Queen.
I know. Love her. She would be a type 1.
We love a Michelle Obama type 1 queen.
Type 2, which is what Addi mistyped herself as.
This is who I thought I was, who I want and strive to be.
Everyone wants to be type 2.
Yeah.
I have a type 2 friend, and she's always like, being a type 2. Because, I mean, there is with each one, there's good and bad. It's like, okay, when
Yeah.
you're too much of something,
there's always a fault if you're going too hard at something.
but it's kind of annoying when it's like, okay, your biggest flaw is that like you're too helpful.
Yeah.
As like a type 4, I'm like, I would love to be a type 2. But type 2 is the helper. They're demonstrative, generous, people-pleasing, and possessive. And their childhood wound is, I must put my needs on the back burner so that I can earn love through selflessness and generosity. If I'm helpful, I'll be loved. Which,
I identify with that
yeah.
statement a lot, which is why I think, because I'm a type 3, I think I'm a type 3 heavy wing too, because I do like possessiveness, definitely me. I'm a pretty possessive person, and I am pretty selfless at times, but like my reasoning may be different than someone who's like a strict type 2.
Yeah, I think the big difference between 2 and 3, which is probably the most common mistype, is 3s thinking they're a 2, because they're both like that, but the type 2 is really doing it because that's truly like the only way they see capable of feeling loved. And type 3, they're like that kind of more because they're image conscious and
They want to be perceived as that.
exactly. Some examples are Mary Kay, Dolly Parton, and Paula Abdul.
A bunch of queens, once
I
again.
know, a bunch of queens. Honestly, I love type 2s. They're great friends. They're great to have around.
Super loyal. They will literally do anything for you. I'm surprised that London wasn't a type 2.
I think if she took it, I mean, she's a type 4 apparently, which I also see a lot. But, you know, like we said, everyone relates to each one a little bit.
Yeah.
On some level. But yeah, like on their negative side, while it is great to be helpful and everything, like they will completely ignore all of their needs for the sake of others. And sometimes those others aren't treating them amazing in return, and they're just giving and giving and giving.
A lot of like relationships, like narcissistic relationships that like people who are being abused a lot of the time are type 2s because they're just wanting to fix this person who maybe is an addict or has some sort of mental health issues. They're giving themselves up to help. And that is just not healthy for anyone.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times type 2s will kind of attract toxic people. Like, obviously not on purpose, but...
Yeah, because they're just so generous and people know how to take advantage of that.
Exactly. So shout out to all the type 2s. We're jealous of you. We love you. Type 3. This is Addi, so I'll let her read this one.
Type 3 is the achiever. They are adapting, excelling, driven, and image conscious. And their childhood wound is, I must hide my insecurities and feelings with accomplishments and success. If I'm successful, then they'll love me. And I definitely identify with that because I just remember, like, if I did something wrong as a child, like messed something up or, you know, spilled something or was thinking like, oh my gosh, like I did this thing wrong, I'm not perfect, then I like felt like I would literally have a panic attack and go up to my mom and be like, I'm so sorry, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, I don't even care. So that's something that I feel like a lot of type 3s deal with, is just like being really hard on themselves to be successful and not almost like the perfectionist, like feeling like they need to do everything right and like achieve all these things to be loved.
Yeah. And similar to the type 2, instead of like giving and giving and giving to like be helpful, a lot of the times they're like giving and giving their time and their energy to be successful. So they're often workaholics and they'll do anything for $1. And they just have a really good...
$1 does make me holla, girl.
a good work motivation, which is great on a healthy side of things. But when it gets unhealthy, they can just work themselves to the ground in this for the sake of being successful.
Right. And I feel like the reason I identify with type 2 as well, as far as it being like image conscious, is I always want to be perceived as somebody who's like super nice and super generous and super caring and wholesome. And so that's like what I strive to be perceived as. And so that may be like stemming from where all my good deeds come from. It's like, oh, I'm going to give all these things so that I look like a good person. And that might not be like the right intention to do that.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying about like the same action but different intention.
Right.
Like a type 3 will do it so that they seem that way. A type 2 will do that because they really are that way, you know?
Right. So yeah, type 3s, they are pretty cool.
Yeah, I am a wing 3, so I definitely identify with 3 a lot.
Some examples of some type 3s: Michael Jordan, Will Smith, and Oprah Winfrey.
Wow.
Baddie. And I just want to point out that Oprah Winfrey is also a Gemini.
Wow.
So
yeah, it's really interesting.
It's
interesting to see how Enneagrams and Zodiacs correlate. Like a lot of type 4s are water signs.
Yeah.
Because that's like kind of more the creative type.
Mm-hmm. Oprah Winfrey, as we know, is like super generous.
Mm-hmm.
Like she like is always like giving to charity and all this stuff, but also, so I bet you she's a 3-wing too.
Yeah.
She totally comes off that way.
Type 4 is the individualist. They are expressive, dramatic, self-absorbed, and temperamental. And the thing you really need to know about type 4s is just that they're really misunderstood. And it's kind of, they're also very self-hating because... Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. I hate being a type 4. Because, you read that compared to, okay.
Yeah, it's like the 2 last ones were negative, where all the other ones and the other ones were positive. For
exactly.
The most part.
Self-absorbed, dramatic, and temperamental. Those are not things I want to be.
Name a positive thing.
Name one positive trait of a 4. No. They're creative. That's a good thing. But the thing I'm saying is that, type 4 is just extremely misunderstood. I think they really come off that way. They come off as dramatic. They come off as self-absorbed and temperamental. I think at our core, we're not like that at all. But that's just how others perceive us because we're just so deep. That's the thing. The overall theme, I think, of being a 4 is just not wanting to be like anyone else.
And not wanting to be compared to anybody else.
Yeah, we hate being compared. Growing up, especially being so close in age with Addi, anytime anyone compared me to her, I'm like, I'm not her. I'm my own person. I can't imagine if we were twins.
Yeah.
I would lose my mind. Because I hate being compared to people. I want to do my own thing. I want to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing.
Right.
In high school, I would purposely, embarrass myself just for the sake of,
standing out
and not being like everyone else and being different. So even that's kind of our fault, sometimes to a fault. We're so unique that we're literally just doing it simply to stand out.
Yeah.
And our childhood wound is no one knows me for who I am. No one gets me, so I can't be loved. And that's where we kind of cross the line from I need to be like this so I can be loved. I need to be like this so I can be loved. Type 4s, like I said, are kind of self-hating and they just won't even accept love because they don't even love themselves.
Yeah, they think you can't understand me, therefore you can't love me because you don't know me.
Exactly. No one can understand me. I'm so complex and you're just never going to get it. So if you don't get me, there's no way you can love me.
I dated a type 4 Gemini once and it was very rough. He literally oh my God, we would be on a date and he would be like, yeah, I use this special organic deodorant that is from this off market blah blah blah. We literally got in a fight about deodorant because I was like, Old Spice is the best, and he was like, no, this random small business one is literally the best deodorant ever, and I was like, you're annoying. We didn't last long.
Yeah, yikes. No, yeah, we just want to be super underground and indie. I'm literally half my playlist. Sometimes I'll just add a song because I'm like, okay, this song isn't that good, but no one else is listening to it, so it's my own little song, Things like that. Some examples are Anne Frank, Winona Ryder, and Edgar Allan Poe.
Bruh.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Edgar Allan Poe be sad.
Yeah, tell me about it. So I feel like my type 4 and my Pisces-ness are just kind of one and the same.
Yeah, for sure. They correlate very much so.
The thing about all of these, by the way, including your wings, is that it can change. Your personality isn't always going to be the same forever. And like I said, it does, kind of distinguish
early on,
and it develops over time. As you go through these different phases of your life, it can kind of change. So I used to identify as a 4 type 5, but I think once I kind of hit early adulthood, or maybe even a little bit before that, I kind of changed from a wing 5 to a wing 3, which we just read 3. But I used to be a type 5 or a wing 5, which is the thinker. They are perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. And I think my dad's a 5. I don't think he's taken it, but
My
I can
boyfriend's
already...
a 5.
Their childhood wound is it's not okay to be too comfortable. I must develop mastery of a subject to survive. So they are just really, really, really smart.
They have like a million hobbies.
They have a million hobbies, and they just want to know everything about everything. They believe that, like, knowledge is power, and it is. And they're just not going to be successful in life or feel safe and comfortable unless they're just completely aware.
They kind of always have to be right.
But yeah, just super smart, very good at just sitting back and listening and analyzing and taking in for information. They're very just like data based.
Yeah.
And numbers and things like that make sense to them. And I relate to this a lot, and I feel like I get a lot of those traits from my dad.
Yeah.
And so I think growing up I was a 5, and I still, like I said, identify with 5 a lot, but more a 3 now. And I think the difference is once I found something I was passionate about and had that drive.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the achiever, type 3, is all about achieving and being driven and...
Especially the image conscious part of
Yes.
like being in the spotlight and like
Yeah.
having so many people watching your life.
Yeah, so I think
It's impossible to not be image conscious at that point.
Exactly. I think being a YouTuber really shaped me to be more of a wing 3. Because before it was like, I don't have a really great work ethic, but that's just because I wasn't passionate. I didn't find something that I loved to work at, and now I do. And so it's become a huge part of me now. But yeah, some examples of type 5 are Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and Vincent van Gogh, all very bright, intelligent people.
For sure.
Type 6 is the loyalist. They are engaging, responsible, anxious, and suspicious. And their childhood wound is, I'm not okay to trust myself. I won't be safe until I find someone or something to trust. So these people are very, very loyal, obviously, but in turn, very clingy. They don't have a great sense of self-worth and self-identity. They find everything they need in others, and they seek that out.
It sounds like they have an anxious attachment style as well.
Yeah, just really clinging on to whoever, kind of like leeches, just really just like, give me love and comfort
Validation.
and security.
Yeah.
And without that, they feel very lost and anxious, and they're just very suspicious of everyone around them. It's really hard to like become friends with a loyalist because they keep a lot of people out unless you're in their circle. But once you are, they will defend you to their death.
Yeah, for sure. And they will cling on a little bit and kind of get a lot of comfort from others. And they kind of struggle with like aloneness and individuality a little bit.
Yeah, some examples are Eminem, Prince Harry, and Mark Twain.
Interesting.
Next is our mother, a type 7.
And Robbie.
And Robbie, our close friend. The enthusiast. They are spontaneous, versatile, distractible, and scattered. And they are just always doing something. Anything they can do to avoid their emotions, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and I literally guessed this was Robbie like before she even took the test because I was like, that is literally you. And yeah, she is a type 7 through and through.
And the funny thing about that is Robbie is an Aquarius, and they are known to be like the most emotionless sign.
Yeah.
So it would make sense for her to be a type 7. Their childhood wound is it's not okay to depend on anyone or anything. If I distract myself, I won't feel my grief, which that just kind of speaks volumes.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of kids who had a very traumatic childhood tend to be type 7s because they are like escaping. They're too young at that age to deal with it, so they learn to escape from it from a very early age, and then they carry that on to adulthood.
Yeah. Anytime there's a problem, they're booking a trip. If they're stressed out,
They go shopping, and instead of like, oh, I'm sad because this, they're like, I'm sad. let's go do this, or I'm sad, let's go kind of like hang out with my friends and not talk about anything. It's very hard to get them to open up about like how they're really feeling.
Yeah, and there's always an easier solution to just go out and distract. Some examples are Amelia Earhart, Goldie Hawn, and Miley Cyrus. While they are, I feel like we kind of give them a bad rep of like, deal with your emotions. But they're also just really fun. Like on a healthy side, they deal with it when they need to, but they're fun and they're the life of the party.
Yeah, they're the people that everyone wants to be around. They like make everyone feel heard. They have a very tiny group of people they're actually close to, but they have a ton of friends and acquaintances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I have type envy for any type other than 2, it's 7.
For sure.
Type 8 is the challenger. They are self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational. Their childhood wound is it's not okay to trust anyone. If I'm totally self-sufficient, I won't get hurt. So this is the person that is always going to be ready to defend someone or debate, or
they're stubborn.
They're very stubborn.
And they just want to challenge everything. You're like, well, why? They're the type of kid that was like, well, why to every question. Like, they just had more questions. Like, they just want to challenge everyone else's way of thinking and the situation. And that can be a really good thing. Like, it can cause them to be very smart people because they're not just going to take a piece of information and think that it's true. They're going to dig deep and challenge that. So they're not just going to, read a tweet and be like, oh my God, did you hear that Kanye and Jeffree Star are like in a scandal? They're not going to take that and be like, oh my God. They're going to, challenge it and find evidence and be like, okay, well, this is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, on a healthy side of things, that's great. And they're very good at respectfully getting their points across and respectfully challenging people. But on a negative side, they're just very defensive, and
they can be hard people to get along with. For sure. They're very opinionated. And if you don't agree with their opinion on an unhealthy side, if you don't agree with their opinion, it can cause them to like lash out at you.
Yeah. But they make great leaders, and they're good at voicing their opinions to everyone.
Yeah.
Some examples are Frank Sinatra, Martin Luther King Jr., and Courtney Love. The last one is type 9, which was Landon's type, and it's the mediator. They're receptive, reassuring, agreeable, and complacent. So it's kind of very opposite to type 8. So I feel like a type 8 wing 9 would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, it's probably pretty rare.
Their childhood wound is it's not okay to assert myself or my needs. If I don't rock the boat, everything will be okay. And reading that, like, just wow, that sounds just like Landon.
Yeah.
They're just quiet and small, and they make themselves like that in order to feel safe and like they're not in anyone's way. And they're great mediators. They are really good at looking at
every side of a story.
Exactly. And being able to, I see your side, but I also see your side, and communicating with both parties and helping them come to an understanding. They see the good in everyone.
Yeah, but they hate conflict.
They hate conflict, especially when it's like in their own personal lives. They'll help other people with their conflict all day, but once it comes to conflict that involves them directly, they're not about it.
Yeah.
And similar to a 7, they're just going to avoid that.
Pretty passive.
Very passive people. I feel like type 2 and type 9 are similar in the way that they just attract negativity sometimes. Yeah. Because people see that. They're too nice, and
people take advantage.
Exactly. So yeah, it was very hard being with a type 9 because sometimes I'm just like, stick up for yourself. Like,
It's frustrating. You want them to, like, be able to voice their own opinion and be able to be heard by others.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like you did the talking for Landon to stand up for him because no one else would. And that was, like, super important in your relationship. And you're not even really great at conflict, but being with him was helpful for you to be able to stand up for him. to anyone who was kind of like saying anything negative. Like you were his kind of like ride or die. Like, you know, he's not going to say something to you, but I will.
Yeah.
So don't mess with him.
Exactly. Yeah. I love type 9s. I love them so much, and
they're just great people to be around.
They really are. I just wish they would stick up for themselves more and kind of find more of their voice.
Yeah, for sure. But I feel like that's definitely, like we said, something you can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a healthy side of being a 9 and being able to stand up for yourself without being, you know, too conflict oriented in a way. They're able to, like, a healthy 9 is able to look at a situation in a conflict and resolve it very easily in a way that, like, everybody feels heard.
Mm-hmm. And then an unhealthy 9 will just be like, I don't want to fight.
Yeah, they'll just hold their feelings in until they explode.
Yep. Some examples are Zooey Deschanel, Audrey Hepburn, and Abraham Lincoln. I love looking at these examples because I feel like it paints such a interesting picture of the types.
The type, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Honest Abe.
Yep. If you'd like to take the test for yourself, go to truity.com. They have a great online free one. There's some better ones that aren't free if you want to do that. This is the best free one that I found. And after you get your type from there, I recommend going to the Enneagram Institute to do more research. That's my favorite place that kind of lists out really good descriptions of each of the types.
Yeah, and they even have like compatibility when it comes to types, and I thought that was super interesting, of like understanding how to take this personality and have them work together.
Yeah.
So now that you have learned all this new information about zodiacs and enneagrams, how can you use that information to apply it to your life and make your life better and help you understand yourself a little bit more? In regards to the zodiacs, one tool that I really love for personal development is the app called The Pattern. You enter in your birth chart and it gives you a very specific deep dive into your personality, your fears, your strong suits, and really kind of, like the Enneagram, tells you a more in-depth, like, positive and negative traits and kind of why you are the way that you are in regards to that. As well as the deep dive, it actually has cycles in your life. So it'll tell you based on your chart and in conjunction of where the planets are in the years and in the next coming months, it'll tell you what cycles you're going through. So it'll be like, oh, you're going through a cycle of rebirth and you're completely changing who you are and you're dropping old friendships. And actually, before me and my boyfriend started dating, I had, like 6 months before, I had a cycle on my Pattern app, and it said 6 months, and it said, this cycle is all about self-discovery, and you need to not be in any relationship during this. This is all about focusing on yourself and learning yourself. And I was like, yeah. And literally, like 6 months later, I really did a lot of self-discovery in that 6 months, and then I met my boyfriend after that. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And it is pretty, like, intense when it tells you. I mean, there's probably like 6 or 7 cycles. Some of them are like 5 years long. Some of them are a couple weeks long. And it kind of just tells you like what's going to be going on with your life in regards to the planets. So I thought that was really cool. Along with the cycles and the deep dive, they also have a compatibility calculator on there, and you can do it even if the other person doesn't have the app. You just enter in their birth chart and it'll tell you all about your relationship, the pros and cons, what you need to work on, and it's really helped me not only in my romantic relationships, but in my friendships, like better understand the relationship and my friend or partner. I think it's a really good tool to really better understand your relationships and kind of work out certain issues you may be having, because it'll tell you like, this is because this. It's really a lot of conflict comes from 2 people not thinking the same, but wanting the same outcome. So being able to better understand the other person.
Yeah.
Another really awesome thing for astrology is they actually have astrology forecasts on YouTube, tons of different ones. I'll link some of my favorites in the episode links, but they basically say like, okay, this week we're going to have a retrograde and a full moon, and it's a good time to make plans and sign up for things and start new things, but it's not a good time for communication and relationship issues and all this stuff. And it'll kind of tell you, okay, this is what's going on in regards to the planets, and here's how it'll affect your life and your decisions. And actually, Ronald Reagan's wife, Nancy, had a personal astrologer that she would refer to and ask about like, okay, is it a good time to do this before they signed any documents, even like as far down to when their planes took off and came back. They're like, okay, how's the planets looking? Is it a good time to fly? And she had her own personal astrologer to report to. So it's kind of just like a fun way to understand how your week's going to go. If you believe in all of that, the astrology forecast can be pretty cool.
There's some great tools when it comes to the Enneagram too, but it really, really just starts with fully understanding your type, your wing, making sure that's solid. If you're curious about it and you really want to get it right, I highly recommend like reading all of them.
Yeah.
And really understanding all of them, because until I like read all of the type 4, I was like, that is so me. I've never felt more seen than when I found my type. So it's definitely something I recommend. Obviously, you know, take the test too, see what the top 3 are, read all of those. But to really wrap your head around the whole thing, I recommend reading all of them. And like I said, the Enneagram Institute is a great place to do that. And after you've really understood your type, there's a lot of YouTubers out there who kind of dive into it and make specific videos for each type.
Right.
And there's a podcast that I love called Enneagram and Coffee, and she gives very personalized advice for each Enneagram. So like how to find productivity as a type 5.
Right.
And so one of the episodes that I found really helped me recently is Grief by Enneagram. So she goes through all of them and says, type 1, here's my advice to
grief,
you when it comes to grief, and goes through each type and tells you very, very personalized based on your type, very particular advice in a lot of different areas. So she has a ton of episodes. Definitely recommend checking her out. And she's just really soothing to listen to.
Yeah, she has a great voice.
Mm-hmm. So those are some sources that I love, and I hope you enjoy kind of looking into it if you do.
Alrighty, that pretty much wraps up the Zodiac and Enneagram lesson for the day. I feel like we are, what's the word?
Teachers?
No, what's the call? Oh, I feel like we are little professors and you guys are our students. Class is out of session.
Recess.
Now it is time for our sisterly advice segment. Woo. Our friend by choice, she says, hey, Addi and Cam. She spelled my name wrong, but it's fine. We're not going to hold her up.
Addi. I was expecting a Y.
It's just an I, guys. Congrats on your new series. Thanks, girl. I watched the first video and it was so inspirational and soothing. So, my trouble is that I maintain a long-distance relationship for the last year due to the global pandemic. I haven't seen my boyfriend in months, and sometimes I can't cope with how much I miss him. The thing is, I'm constantly living by fear that at some point we're probably going to break up, and I keep making bad scenarios that could happen in the future. Sometimes I get so overwhelmed by my negative thoughts that I can't think of positive scenarios, and I avoid getting other jobs done since my mind is so busy thinking and thinking. I want you to advise me on how to see things with positivity and how to not be a clingy person that I am.
That's a hard one.
I think I'm going to address this pretty vaguely, not necessarily about like long distance relationships, but just the overthinking part in general. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's a lot of people in your boat right now that are dealing with a long distance relationship because of the pandemic. And I think, you know, this is something that a lot of people are having to adapt to. Mm-hmm. And long distance relationships are hard. But if you're meant to be with that person, you will.
Yeah.
Like, you will. And that's, even if it's not right now, even if you take a break because the distance is too hard, if that person is your person, you will find yourself back together with them by whatever means possible. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to overthinking, you just have to let go. Really, like, let go of your negative thoughts, let go of your, like, spirals. And in that moment when you're, like, just in a loop of negative thinking, because I do that all the time, you have to just kind of like sit back and just watch it flow by, and you're like, oh, look at these negative thoughts, and realize that, okay, there's negative thoughts and there's positive thoughts, and I can create either, and you can just watch them go by. Mm-hmm. And know that those are not accurate. That is your anxiety creating things in your mind that are not yet true and might not ever be true. Mm-hmm. So like I said in the first episode, control what you can control and know that your life plan and purpose is already undergoing and already written out. I mean, obviously you have the decision to make the life that you want, but at the end of the day, whether or not you're going to work out, it's already kind of like...
What's meant to be will be.
What's meant to be will be. So try to let go of trying to control the situation so much and just enjoy your time with him while you do have it. If that is like the end, if it is going to end one day, you don't want to spend your entire time with him, this person that you love, just thinking negatively about the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that's so much easier said than done, but once you really master that, problem solved. And as someone who has been in a long-distance relationship, I can definitely relate to that, especially the parts of just kind of being clingy and codependent. And it really just comes down to effort.
Yeah.
You both just have to be putting in that effort. And when it doesn't feel like it's being reciprocated, that's usually when problems arise. And so, I don't know, just keep that in mind as you navigate this relationship.
Communicate that very clearly with them.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So that you're on the same page. And if he's not putting in the effort that you deserve, then he doesn't deserve you.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to put in effort with someone who is far away. It's really easy to just show up to someone's house with flowers or
cuddle and watch a movie.
Exactly. It's a lot easier to take that love and accept it for what it is and not overthink about things like that. Because oh yeah, he loves me. He does these things and we hang out all the time and blah, blah. But when you don't have that and the only way you can really feel loved is through communication, that just makes
you have to go the extra mile.
Yeah, communication is just that much more important, and you just have to make sure that those communication skills are just really, really good. And when it comes to just missing them all the time, a great tip that I have, when we were in a long-distance relationship, we made a Snap story for just each other. So instead of posting to our whatever story, we just put a million things on our story. So we, at the end of the day, be like, did you see my story?
It's like a little vlog.
Yeah, exactly.
Of your day so they can keep up. It's really cute.
So you're not constantly bothering them all day with Snapchats, but, they can see what you've been doing, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope that advice helped, and you can apply that. Anyone who's in a long-distance relationship or deals with negative thoughts can apply that and take some advice from what we said.
Yep.
That is the end of the episode. We hope you enjoyed. Like always, we will be going live after this airs for about an hour and a half after this airs to dive deeper into this conversation, to answer any of your questions. And we would love to talk about your Enneagram type and your Zodiac sign. So definitely do your birth chart and take the test so that when we go live, we can all talk about it. Mm-hmm. I would love to know what y'all are, especially in relation to the type and the Zodiac sign. Like we said, they often correlate. So it'll be really cool to see how those correlate from you guys.
Uh-huh. Follow our Instagram. If you're not, we're going to be going live on there, like we said, sbc.pod. And if you want to send in something for the Sisterly Advice column, that's where you're going to be sending it. That's all for today, folks.
We will see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Toodaloo.
Toodles.